Welcome. I'm Glynda Hull, the Faculty Director of the Center for Teaching and Learning here on campus. And in collaboration with the American Culture Center and Summer Sessions, CTL, the Center for Teaching and Learning, is so pleased to help sponsor this workshop on teaching in the summer. So I want to start off just briefly by recognizing the colleagues who helped put this workshop together and have gotten us all here today. So a shout out first to the CTL team, Sarah Pickett and Marisella Rodriguez and Melissa Coe. I want to recognize also Victoria Robinson, our director of the American Culture Center, and Doug Parada, who is the American Culture Center's project and policy analyst, and a special shout out to Doug for masterminding our Zoom today. And last, I want to mention Laura Adams from Summer Sessions. So this is the team who has kind of orchestrated our workshop today, and a big thank you to all of them. We are really jazzed to be able to offer a workshop on summer teaching once again. We are jazzed, first of all, because we love teaching, whether it's in summer or during the academic year. And we love Berkeley students. And you know, it's always thrilling to have the chance to come together, even if it's all too infrequent, to come together and think pedagogically about how to make our classrooms invigorating and welcoming for all. And we also recognize, of course, that teaching in summer is always special with its challenge of a compressed time frame. So it's great to gather and share ideas about managing those constraints. And I'm here to say that they can be managed. Having this workshop now this year is also especially important because of this extraordinary time that we are teaching in. While we began teaching in person this academic year, and we were all so grateful for that, we know that our students and probably all of us are still pretty COVID weary. We're still recovering from the stresses and traumas that have had an impact on abilities to participate fully. So it's more important than ever, I think, to make our classes this summer, whether they're online or in person, compassionate and inclusive spaces where learning is as productive as possible for everybody. And our talented panelists later this morning will have a lot to say about that. I want to mention too, it's also important to be kind and compassionate to yourselves as teachers this summer. And I hope you'll promise me that. Summer is supposed to be for teachers a time to kick back a little. So take care of yourselves. Do some of those activities you mentioned on the Padlet. I want to thank you for the commitment to teaching and to our students that's demonstrated by your presence here today. You collectively represent over 30 different departments, which is a nice cross-section of the university. Most of you are expecting up to 50 students in your class this summer, and a few of you are expecting up to 200 intrepid souls. 2/3 of you are new to teaching in summer here at Berkeley, and some of you are new to teaching at Berkeley all the way around. So we especially welcome you newbies to Berkeley and hope you experience some of the magic that this place can offer. Our hope is that at this workshop, you'll find a way to connect, of course, to the presenters, but also with each other so that you can build a little community around teaching on campus this summer. This is something I truly encourage. So here in broad strokes is our schedule. And by the way, we will record the main session today, but not the breakouts. And we're going to begin with a couple of presentations in the main Zoom room, including a session related to syllabus design, which is a topic a good many of you requested. Then we'll take a break, after which we'll return for what we are calling a carousel, a teaching carousel on equitable pedagogy. And then you'll be in small groups in breakout rooms, and our presenters will rotate among you. And I want to preview that we have some terrific presenters for you, some award-winning teachers and in general, wise folk who have a lot to share about the ins and outs of summer teaching and teaching in general at Berkeley. So again, a most hearty welcome to you. I wish you and your students much joy and good conversations and robust learning and speedy grading this summer. And I hope you'll reach out to me if I can personally assist with anything. And I'll pop my email in the chat. And now it's my pleasure to introduce and turn things over to Laura Adams, who is Assistant Director of Operations at Berkeley Study Abroad, and she'll be presenting on the 2022 summer sessions policies and also on undergraduate student demographics. Laura.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for having me here. I'm going to share my screen. Yes, so as Glynda mentioned, I am the Assistant Director of Operations for Study Abroad. I also am a data analyst for summer, so that's sort of how I play into this here. I'm hoping to give you just a quick preview and look at our summer students. So jumping right in. So summer 2022 policies. So the rather generous pandemic era policies for summer are continuing into summer 2022. The $100 cancellation fee that had been a feature of summer for years and years and years, I think it's gone for good. We do have a $25 application fee that's new for 2022 for visitors. That was actually more about data integrity than about revenue. But students can cancel up until the Friday before the session that they're enrolled in without any penalty at all. The deadline to add, drop, or withdraw with a tuition refund is the second Friday of each session, with the exception of the 3-week sessions where the deadline is the first Friday. There are some fees for summer that are non-refundable after the first day of the session, but that information is all on our website as well. If a student withdraws after the refund deadline, they can get a tuition credit for any subsequent course added and within that same summer session that happens after the drop. And then finally, the deadline to change grading options from pass, no pass to letter grade or vice versa remains 1 week prior to the end of the session for all sessions. Okay, so and just really quick summary of what's kind of happening in 2022. This is our first in-person summer since 2019, hooray. We saw a really elevated level of UCB undergraduate enrollment in summer in the remote summers. It is still elevated, but we're expecting it to sort of slowly reduce and go back to pre-pandemic levels within a few years. We had a massive decline in international visitors during our remote summers. We're seeing some recovery in summer 2022, but we're still pretty far behind pre-pandemic international visiting numbers. We saw, again, massive growth in programs such as pre-college and summer edge. I'm going to talk about those a little bit later. During the remote summers, there was much more access for students and less cost since they could live at home and didn't have to come to campus. So we're expecting declines in some of those programs as we return to more in-person courses. And then our study abroad programs are running again. We're at about 60%, I would say, of a typical summer, but students are getting out there again, which is really exciting. And then finally, the overall summer demographics are looking about like they have for some time, and we'll take a look at that next. Okay, so this is our summer visiting population, and on the far left is the most recent snapshot for summer 2022. That was on Saturday, compared to the actual census numbers from the last 4 summers. So you can really see in 2018-19, those were the last pre-pandemic summers, a real different distribution in terms of the percentage that UCB undergraduates made up of the total summer. So 2020 was really the peak where we had 15,000 undergraduates enrolled for summer, still making up the majority of the population in 2021, but numbers started to reduce. And again, we're expecting it to continue to reduce over the next few years. We're probably at about 75 to 80% of final numbers right now. So these numbers will still grow, but I would expect the overall distribution of students to remain the same. Because the majority is UCB students, that's really what we're going to focus on in this presentation, and undergraduates specifically. So looking at ethnicity. Okay, so I'm gonna take the comment. I'm gonna read the comments after, if that's okay. Okay, so looking at level 1 ethnicity, this is really the highest level view of ethnicity data. It comes from the UC undergraduate application. It's a single value ethnicity that's derived from a trumping system. So this is typically used for federal reporting. But looking here on the very left, this is the most recent academic year, so an average of the census data. So this current academic year, undergraduates 25% white or other students, 23% underrepresented minorities. At UCB, that contains that, or for the whole UC system, that means African American, Chicanx, Latinx, Pacific Islander, Native American, and Native Alaskan students. 13% international students. Obviously, these students also have ethnicities, but these are our degree-seeking J1, F1 international students. And then 39% Asian. So as we look at summers, we really don't veer very far off of that with our undergraduate population. What we do see is a higher percentage of those international students taking classes in the summer. The reason being that there is no non-resident tuition in summer. So we often see international students really loading up on units in the summertime because it's a really good deal for them in terms of finances. Moving on. So looking at gender, again, on the far left, this is the most recent academic year, skewing 54% female, 45% male. We, I think, just about 1% declined to state, and then 0.2% non-binary. The actual non-binary numbers are actually quite a bit higher than this because of the way that the data is treated. So just a reminder that really respecting the students' pronouns is really important. I've seen a couple of cases this semester of faculty that have openly disregarded pronouns, and it's been really difficult for the students. So anyway, the numbers just don't show the true number of non-binary students on our campus. Again, summer doesn't skew like a lot different than the academic year. And then it's just even more female identified students in summer. So it's just in both terms, it tends to go that way. Okay, so there's a lot going on in this slide, but the main thing I want to focus on at the top is looking at entry status of students. So that's students who enter as four-year freshmen, as a freshman, so for a four-year degree, or students who enter as transfer students, which is considered advanced standing. So again, at the top, we're looking at the most recent academic year where 80% of the undergraduate student body are four-year freshmen, are freshman entrants, and 20% are transfer students. We do see a higher population of transfer students in the summer. Again, that makes sense. They have a really limited time frame and a lot to accomplish, as well as a lot of really exciting opportunities in the summer, like additional minors, study abroad, internships, and other opportunities. The majority of undergraduates that are taking summer classes are continuing from the prior spring. It's been about 83% for the last two summers. And then the rest of the students are either they're returning, they're being readmitted, they've taken a break from the university. That actually has been a little bit higher in these last pandemic years because more students are taking time off than in the pre-pandemic summers. And then also there are new students. So the fall admits, both freshmen and transfer, are given the opportunity to opt into summer. So they can do that through their CalCentral account. Those programs are called Freshman Edge and Transfer Edge. There's additional programming available to these students, as well as additional grant money for summer, which a lot of people don't know. But there's pretty good funding out there for these programs. We saw huge growth in these EDGE programs in remote times, again, because students can stay home and participate in them. So we're expecting a drop back down to sort of pre-pandemic levels in terms of numbers of in-person students taking advantage of these programs. But 13% of the overall undergraduates were new students last year. So these could be students that their very first class at UCB you'll be teaching. Okay, so looking at first generation students, the way that we typically define this at Berkeley is that neither student has a four-year degree. Looking at application data in terms of students who have accepted their offer of admission at Berkeley over the past years, it averages around 30% of students where they've answered that neither parent has a four-year degree. When we compare that to the summer population, we have slightly higher first generation enrollment in summer. So, okay, yeah, moving on. Okay, so class standing. This is sort of the most unreliable data point in terms of looking at the snapshot data for the current summer. At the top, you can see the distribution of this academic year with 23% freshmen, 20% sophomores, 30% juniors, 28% seniors. The thing that is consistent is that there's more senior enrollment in summer than during the academic year. And of course, that's because students are finishing up their requirements and trying to graduate or taking advantage of extracurricular opportunities. So in terms of, you can see really in summer 20 and 21, that 10%, 11% of freshmen, that was that really big jump in students taking advantage of this freshman edge program because the courses were entirely remote. So that probably won't be quite as high, but students are still accepting their offers. So the deadline for freshmen to accept the offer of admission in Berkeley was May 1st, and it's June 1st for transfers. So we're going to see more movement here, but you can expect more upperclassmen than lower. Okay, so then additional summer populations that you want to be aware of is that we do have student parents. So these are undergraduates who have dependents. It's a difficult metric to obtain, but we know that in the past summers, an average of 127 parent grants were issued by financial aid. Also, students with disabilities. Our disabled students program serves over 3,500 students. We don't have a statistic on what the enrollment is for summer, but you can expect to be receiving accommodation letters for your classes. We also have high school students enrolled in summer, which can be a surprise to some people. They're mostly in lower division classes, occasionally get permission to take upper division classes, but there's 3 different programs that are feeding in through, there's an actual residential program as well as commuter and virtual programs. Right now we have about 428 enrolled students, but that number is expected to grow because the commuter and virtual programs are still accepting applications. So those students have to be 16 or older and a rising junior or senior. And if you're curious, they actually perform very, very well in their courses. And then finally, I just wanted to raise the issue of financial aid. Our student population at Berkeley has extremely high financial need. During the academic year, about 51% of undergraduates receive gift aid, which means that they have high enough financial aid to get scholarships or grants. About 60% of students receive some kind of financial aid beyond just scholarships and grants. So in summertime, that carries over. An average of 41% of our undergraduates in the last 4 summers received a UC summer fee grant, which means that they had high enough financial aid to be getting gift aid during the academic year. This year, for the highest need students, that covers 6 units plus the $385 campus fee. On top of that, Pell Grants are available for summer as well. An average of 29% of our UCB students have been receiving Pell Grants in the summer over the last 4 years. So looking specifically at last summer, about 56% of our undergrads enrolled in summer accepted some kind of UC-based award, and 29% accepted a federal based award. So that's the end of my official. Do we have time to answer a couple questions?
Yeah, Laura, go ahead and answer a couple questions.
Okay. Okay, so the question is, so international students who are struggling with language and need to change courses. So just if everyone isn't aware, there is a language minimum that is reviewed through the visa process. But even when students meet that, you're right, they sometimes do struggle with language. So yeah, so it's any subsequent class. So say that they drop a session C class, they could add a D, an E, or an F. And use the tuition credit towards it. So it really gets, the only time you can't use the tuition credit is in those last sessions, right? When there's no session beyond it. But there are options for that.
Okay, I'm just clarifying, because in the past,
yeah,
we haven't necessarily been able to do that. They've had to use the tuition credits in the same session.
Really?
In the same summer session. Yeah. So I'm just double checking with you. Okay.
So as in, like, if it's a C, it has to be C.
Yeah, that's often been the case. And then they've had to write for a waiver or, some sort of petition. So I'm just double checking that with you. Or if you could double check that for me, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not my understanding. Is it possible that it's the type of courses that are available? Like, for instance, if it's like a college writing class or?
No, I just work with a lot of the international students because we run the ESL courses.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I
So
will follow up with you on that.
Yeah, that's okay, thank you. It's not so much that, they just sometimes take a couple of Berkeley classes and it's a little bit too much language wise. So they find themselves wanting to drop one, let's say, and switch to a different class. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So the next question was, department has been continuing to tell me that students seem to prefer online, while transfer new seem to prefer in person. So there isn't a lot of data. There are surveys. There's the Pulse surveys, which you can look up. I did attend an advising matters section yesterday where they featured a student panel specifically about this. And the overwhelming response from students was that they want options. They want the option to be hybrid. They don't want to have to come to class when they feel uncomfortable doing so. And so it's like they want in person too, right? So it's like, I think what they want is flexibility, to be able to stay up to date, but do what's best for themselves, and sort of deal with these additional pandemic challenges that a lot of students are facing. The point was made that, there's been a disproportionate sort of impact on non-traditional student populations. And so especially those students may need more flexibility in terms of being in person or being hybrid at certain times of a course.
Laura, if you don't mind, I might jump in and we'll collect the questions and we could share them with you after.
Perfect.
Just to keep our schedule going. Thank you so much. A virtual round of applause for Laura. You always bring so much useful information for thinking about and understanding our student population. And it's always striking to me too, to think about how many students are continuing from the spring into the summer, and keeping that work going. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Sorry to ramble on.
Oh no, never rambling. Always helpful. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Pickett. I am going to be leading the next segment. So I'm going to pop my screen share on here. It's great to be with you all here in the 2022 Teaching in Summer Workshop. I, again, am Sarah Pickett. I use she, her pronouns. And today we're going to be exploring the syllabus as a component of equitable teaching practice in any semester, but thinking about the summer session. I'm joined today by my colleague, Marisella. Marisella, would you unmute and introduce yourself briefly?
Hi, folks. My name is Marisella Rodriguez. My pronouns are she, her. I'm also a senior consultant with the Center for Teaching and Learning, and I'm happy to be here in support of Sarah.
All right, thank you. Are folks seeing my slides?
Yes, I can see them now.
Okay, fantastic. So in many ways, we might think about the syllabus as part of the end of course planning and considerations, a document that captures the progression, the trajectory of our course that we put into place. And we know that many of you are teaching in the first session next week, or maybe teaching in the first session next week. And so you might not have a lot of time to make major shifts in your course planning. That's totally fine. Part of what we want to do today is to provide a couple of different entry points for thinking about different changes in our syllabus, and some of those might be smaller tweaks to iterate around for future classes. Before we begin, I also want to acknowledge that, like many pieces of today's entire workshop, this segment is one to which we could devote much more time. So this morning, we're going to introduce a few ideas and resources that you can hopefully build into your practice. But we hope, as Glynda mentioned, that you'll continue your exploration, your conversations, and sharing with colleagues after today. So where are we headed in the next 30 minutes or so? We are going to think about the role of a syllabus to get us started. We're going to think about 2 entry points for crafting segments of a summer syllabus, and then we'll have a little bit of time for reflection and share out. I'll say that we're going to go through some of these things relatively quickly. I know it's fast, but we hope it'll provide some introduction. And if you're interested in thinking about some of these more deeply, we'll provide some resources. And we're also always available at CTL for individual teaching consultations. So to that end, Marisella is actually going to share a couple of links in the chat that will help with providing some foundational information about syllabus design, as well as regarding our CTL consultation services. Okay. So to get us started, I think for many of us, a syllabus is likely a familiar document, but we might be thinking about it in slightly different ways. And so I want to begin by asking our group to take just a moment to consider what a syllabus sort of means to you. What do you think of when you think of a syllabus? And so I'm going to ask that you share 3 words that come to mind when you hear that term. And we're going to do this using Poll Everywhere. So I'm going to pop to our next slide, which will have some information about how to respond. And Marisella is actually going to pop a direct link into the chat. So we'll ask that you head over to polleverywhere.com/UCBCTL and pop in 3 words that come to mind when you think about the term syllabus. We'll take a few minutes for folks to share here. I love seeing that word cloud update. All right, I see the size indicates here some of what people are commonly sharing. And so we can see roadmap, guidance, plan, expectations. I see some other things: evolving, grading, guidelines, agreement, or kinds of information, helpful, philosophy. It's wonderful to see these pop in. I should also say, as folks are adding, that poll everywhere, if folks are interested, is a campus supported tool. So if you're interested in using poll everywhere, we can provide information for how to access this tool. But a wonderful way to see some of the ideas that are coming up for folks. I'm going to pause our map here and say that I think many of the things that are popping up in our word cloud are really representative of a way that we might think about a syllabus. It can be kind of a procedural document, but I'm going to say, for the purposes of our time together, that we might think about a syllabus as a guide or a tool. And so for the purposes of our time together today, I wanted to share this definition or quote. A syllabus can be described as a guide to a course that outlines course policies, required texts, a schedule of assignments, and what will be expected of students. A syllabus, however, is much more, as it not only describes the course, but also provides information about the instructor's personality, teaching style, and approachability. A syllabus offers a first impression of an instructor in a course and sets the tone for an entire class, and thus warrants careful scrutiny. So in other words, the language, the content, the design of our syllabus can convey information about us as instructors, about our learning environment, and about the experience that students might have in our courses. It can also be a learning tool to help students develop or identify support for their learning and learning strategies, as well as a communication tool for thinking about how teaching will be approached. So while a syllabus does not provide a direct documentation of what actually will happen in the classroom, it can serve multiple purposes, making it an important source of information and reflection. And I think, given the compressed timeline of our summer courses, it can be a way to, where we don't have a lot of time to build relationships with our students, things are happening quickly. This is one preview that we can think about. Okay, so why would this be important for thinking about summer classes, and how are we going to connect to this today? One of the things we wanted to share was thinking about motivation. And in particular, if we think about, Laura shared about our students, they're filing into our virtual or in-person class. It might be a long 3-hour section, meeting multiple times a week. What else are our students doing during that time? Are they working? Are they taking care of family? We have student parents. Are they attending other courses, like international students that might be adding to their credits in the summer? If we think about teaching intensive and accelerated courses, the authors Lukowski and Ginsberg suggest that fostering motivation is a key feature of learning and instruction during summer. And so they've shared a motivational framework for culturally responsive teaching that suggests that we can support motivation for students in 4 ways, and these might show up in our syllabus. So I wanted to share them just briefly. One way is by establishing inclusion, creating an atmosphere where learners and instructors feel respected and connected to each other, developing attitude or creating opportunities to have favorable disposition toward learning and incorporating personal relevance and student choice, enhancing meaning, so giving opportunities, creating opportunities that are engaging and challenging, but really include a learner's perspectives and values, and engendering competence, so creating an understanding that learners are learning things that they find and perceive as valuable and authentic in the real world. So again, we might think about how we can incorporate some of these into a syllabus, and that's where we're headed next. I just wanted to plug that this text, if you're interested, is available at the library. And for our short time together, and considering that summer sessions are fast approaching, we're going to peek into 2 ways that we might think about a syllabus and how it can be crafted to set the stage for motivating students no matter where you are in your planning. So for the next part of the segment, we're going to introduce the segment. We're going to think about 2 practices that you can think about in your syllabus, some of the language that you might use in crafting your syllabus, and incorporating co-construction. So let's start with thinking about syllabus language. I'd like to pick out 2 pieces of syllabus language that relate to this culturally responsive motivation framework. And those are related to a tool from USC Center for Urban Education Syllabus Review Tool. Marisella will pop that into the chat for folks to check out later. And we're going to look at 2 of the characteristics that they share. The first one is thinking about welcoming language. A welcoming syllabus communicates care, respect, and inclusion as class and instructional norms. It might demonstrate that students are valued and a willingness to support them in challenges, and might include something like community agreements. Starting with welcoming might seem like a small thing, but that said, a syllabus, again, can be rather task-oriented. So considering this as a way and one lens for kind of thinking about the beginning of relationship building and community orientation in our classes can be important. It also highlights affirming kindness in our classes, an important element during this kind of continued pandemic period. And this kindness has actually been shown to influence the experience of students, particularly those from typically those who are excluded due to race and ethnicity in higher education. And that's true in STEM, which is I'll plug as my home disciplinary field. So it can be an important piece. So what I'd like to ask folks to do for a moment, just to think, we won't collect this in any way, but just to think about the syllabus you have planned for your summer course. And if you were to read through that syllabus, take just a moment and think to yourself, what is one part of that syllabus language or content that would be welcoming? We'll give just 5 minutes for 5 seconds for folks to just reflect on that individually for a moment. Okay. So I've described welcoming, and maybe you're thinking, yes, I can think of lots of different places, or maybe you're feeling like, this all sounds great, Sarah, but I have no idea what this would look like in my syllabus. So I want to share a few example quotes for thinking about what welcoming can look like. And it can be in different places of the syllabus. So for example, we might think about things like course policies, for example, around attendance. One example might look something like this. You should attend every class, but extenuating circumstances arise that can make this difficult. If you cannot attend class, please let me know. If circumstances make you miss more than 3 classes during the semester, you may be overextended. And we ask that you set up time so that we can discuss options to best support you. So thinking about that support element. Another common policy or that comes up is thinking about participation. So something around policy might look like, all of us in this class, you, me, your peers, have a responsibility to create an environment in which we can all learn from each other. I expect everyone to participate in class so that we can all benefit from the insights and experience each person brings. So a little bit of a community orientation instead of only a directive orientation. And one more example is thinking about a syllabus opening. I bring this one up because sometimes our syllabi launch right into the sort of structure of the course, but we might want to include a message like this. I'm looking forward to working with each of you this semester. I've taught this course several times, and I'm always impressed by the quality of work that students produce. I am confident that our class members will also create a strong collection of writings at the end of the semester. Remember, writing is a process and it takes work, but as a community of writers in this class, we'll take steps toward becoming better writers together. All right. So these are some examples of what welcoming language might look like, and this may be some tweaking that we could do in our syllabi coming up. The second characteristic I want to focus on is thinking about creating partnership. And this is a creating partnership syllabus would be one that communicates an instructor's commitment to working with students to ensure their success, their willingness to act on and take in feedback from students, and use a variety of teaching approaches to foster learning and bringing in student perspective. My daughter is home today, so you may hear my 7-month-old joining us in the background. So I'll say that, again, I want to take a moment for folks to think about, before we look at some examples, where in our syllabi might we think about segments that can create partnership. And so again, we'll take just 5 seconds to think about if you are going to walk through your syllabus for the coming semester, the coming summer sessions, where might you find one part that has language or content that creates partnership? Okay, so I want to share a few examples, and then we're going to actually extend this to thinking a little bit more about the content of a syllabus. The first one I want to share is around course materials. For example, something like a TI-84 calculator will be a helpful tool, but not a necessary one in this course. We'll discuss options depending on the tools we have so that everyone can be successful. This is an example that might show up in a course description, thinking about mindset. Mindset research shows that students with a growth mindset are more likely to reach their academic goals. We will read more about this in the first essay of the semester, but essentially a person with growth mindset believes that they can learn even when it's difficult, and that the key to learning is putting in effort. I will do my best to encourage a growth mindset in our class, and I hope you will do the same. And finally, around assignments and grading. This course is designed to promote your learning and is customized in many ways for that purpose. I use the graded assignments and exams outlined below to specifically facilitate your understanding of neuroscience from many different viewpoints and using many different teaching styles. In addition to by sharing your thoughts through assignments, particularly in-class lectures and B courses assignments, I learn highly valuable information throughout the term, allowing me to adjust the course to meet the educational needs of our class community. I also value your input and experience and will offer opportunities for providing anonymous feedback. So I appreciate that this is a lot of different examples and text. We're actually going to share the slides with some of these examples in case it's useful to you in the future. But we wanted to give some of these examples because sometimes it can be a little tricky to think about what this might actually look like in our own context and documents. For the last bit of our time together, I want to focus a bit more on this characteristic of creating partnership and extend that idea to thinking about inviting students in as partners and giving them some agency and ownership over this document that directly affects them. And so some folks refer to this as co-authoring, co-designing, or co-constructing a syllabus. Co-constructing a syllabus is a process of collaborating with students in the development of a syllabus or syllabus segment, rather than it being determined solely by an instructor. And some of the current literature suggests that this practice might promote student agency and ownership as partners in shaping their own course learning environment and experience, providing some relevance as students help shape the course and as it relates to their interests and goals. It can increase transparency, and I think this speaks to some of the expectations that was showing up in our word cloud, but clarifying expectations for students and participation as they weigh in. And also can help to foster partnership and collaboration as they work on building the course together with us as instructors. Overall, then this can influence how students perceive each other and us as instructors and how they might engage in collaborative learning activities. So co-constructing might be familiar to some of us, it might be new for others. And so we want to give a peek again into what this could look like. And then we're going to debrief briefly using Padlet, a tool that many of you saw earlier in our example and kind of welcome warm up this morning. So I appreciate this is a lot of text again, but I want to read it out loud and provide it for those who like to see it and hear it. On the first day of their neuroscience course, Liam shares a preliminary syllabus and notes that this first iteration of the syllabus can be a guide, but will be further developed with student input. Course objectives and introductory sessions have been set, giving an overview of regeneration and sensory systems and methodological approaches. For subsequent sessions, Liam suggested course topics, but they are open to discussion and will likely change based on student interests and ideas. Liam decided on this format in part because in each of those sessions, student colleagues are asked to present an article for discussion and facilitate the associated discussion. All articles will be collaboratively chosen and based on the outlined topics and course objectives. Students are encouraged to identify an article of interest independently, but also meet with Liam to brainstorm ideas. So this scenario speaks more to kind of collaborating on some of the course content, but there are many examples of what co-construction can look like, and there are many different entry points for that. Marisella is going to share a related handout with some examples in the chat. So there will be one specific to co-construction, as well as a link to the slides with some of the text examples from today. If this is new, identifying a place where you can offer choice for students who are participating in your course is a wonderful way to start. Okay. So we've given a blast of information in the last 20 minutes. And so for this last period, we want to give some time to sort of reflect and think about how these might connect to our courses. Given the amount of time we have today, we're not going to hold breakouts, but I have no doubt that members of this group would have rich conversations. Either way, we would like to have you surface some ideas and be able to think about your syllabi using Padlet. And so Marisella is going to pop a link into the chat. And we'll ask that you reflect on a few different questions. So you might pick at least one of these questions. What changes could you make to your syllabus to incorporate language that promotes welcoming or creating partnership? Which elements of your syllabus might you co-construct with student voice or input? And if you have co-constructed syllabus segments before or offered student choice in some way in your courses, please feel welcome to reflect on that experience and share any advice that you might have for colleagues who are interested in trying this. And particularly recognizing that there is a compressed summer timeline. So we're going to give a few minutes for folks to open up that Padlet board and craft your post. I'll note that to get started, you will see some instructions and you'll click on the pink plus button to create your post. And once you've finished writing, feel welcome to engage with other posts for members of the group. You can like posts or add comments. And feel welcome to turn your camera off if you'd like while you're working. And then we'll let you know when we're coming back together. So it'll be quiet on the call for just a few moments. All right, it's wonderful to see some of these ideas, reflections popping up on our Padlet board. And I particularly appreciate seeing the ways that folks are thinking about, you know, kind of, I don't want to say large and small, but larger and smaller grain size ways of incorporating some of these changes. Maybe it is adding one segment to a syllabus or refining some of the language, or thinking about different ways to offer student choice. Maybe it's not going to be redesigning the whole syllabus and all of the course content, but thinking about the other places where students can weigh in on creating the learning environment or tools that they're using to connect, or you know, encouraging them to come to office hours. So thank you all so much for sharing and for popping in some comments on some of the ways folks are thinking about their courses. This Padlet board will be available in case there are any ideas that you're seeing from colleagues that are sparking any interest or ideas for you. And we will also be sharing more information, the PDFs of the slides and the handouts from today. The last thing I want to share is that we'll also have a link to a few other additional syllabus tools that might be useful to folks: a social justice syllabus design tool, a tool from community college colleagues around decolonizing your syllabus, liquid syllabus, which can be particularly useful for folks teaching in remote and online courses, and then the syllabus review tool and guide and inquiry tool from the Center for Urban Education at USC, which we drew on a bit for our discussion today. With that, I want to thank you all so much. And I want to acknowledge that we have an upcoming break. And so we'll be coming back together in about 10 minutes. My colleagues, will you jump on and say we'll be back together at 10:10? Is that correct? All right, wonderful. Thank you all so much. Please feel welcome to turn off your cameras, stand up, grab some water, look away from your screen, and I'll welcome my colleagues. Any announcements before we head to the break?
I don't think so. We're all set.
All right, excellent.
Welcome back, folks. We're so excited to share this next activity with you, which is an opportunity to connect with colleagues doing transformative work all across campus. Our colleagues have prepared 5 lightning talks on topics related to equity and inclusion. These colleagues will share their experiences providing meaningful support to students and other campus educators in and out of the classroom. I'm beyond excited to introduce our 5 topics and teams of presenters. Doug, if you wouldn't mind clicking to the next slide. This is our roster for you today. If I say so myself, it is quite impressive. We have 5 topics here, and I'll briefly introduce our presenters. We have Teaching in American Culture Summer Course, led by John Doherty and Karina Palau. We have Creative Discovery Fellows Program, led by Ryan Ikeda, Kelly Zen, Matthew Kim, Diana Sanchez. We have Library Support for Enhancing Student Learning, led by Corliss Lee, Giselle Tanasi, Sina Wang Jensen. We have Equitable Teaching Strategies by Robin Ball, and we have Creative Discovery Fellows, a storytelling project led by Pablo Gonzalez. So in just a moment, we'll organize you all into randomly assigned breakout rooms where you'll have 10 to 12 minutes to engage with each talk. Doug, if you wouldn't mind clicking to the next slide to show some of the instructions on how to engage with these lightning talks. So like I mentioned, we'll organize folks into breakout rooms. Then we'll plan to rotate speakers to a different room until we complete all 5 talks. This means that you'll be able to stay in your breakout room as a participant for the next hour or so and get to visit with all of these wonderful folks leading these amazing topics. But before we move you into breakout rooms, I first want to acknowledge a couple of things. First is that this may feel so fast to some of you, 10 to 12 minutes in a breakout room experiencing these presentations. But for others, you may feel like this is the perfect amount of time to be introduced to a new resource, topic, or teaching strategy. Wherever you fall on this spectrum, that's okay. We'll plan to share all the resources that presenters are sharing with you in these breakout rooms with the broader audience after today. And you'll also have an opportunity to ask questions verbally or in the chat as you engage with these presenters and what they have prepared for you today. We welcome folks to engage as the presenters plan to facilitate and lead this session. So we'll really defer to all of you in your breakout rooms. There are 2 final thoughts that I want to share with the group. And one is that we'll plan to broadcast messages to warn folks before we move presenters to the next room. So just keep an eye at the little text screen above your screen. And we also don't have an unassigned facilitator for breakout rooms. So when you see a new presenter has arrived, please feel welcome to dive right into their topic and start the lively discussion. Before we go into breakout rooms, I want to check in with our colleagues who are coordinating the breakout room effort. Sarah, do you feel ready to go?
Yes, we are ready. If you find yourself, though, unassigned to a breakout room, just give us one moment and we'll make sure to pair you up with some colleagues.
All right. So you'll see a breakout room prompt in a moment, and we hope you all enjoy the experience.
3, 2, 1, all done. Welcome back. Thank you for the lovely comment in the chat. Yeah, what an incredible workshop today. We really want to thank all of the presenters who spent so much time with us and were whiplashed from one breakout room to the next. Groundhog Day on speed. So thanks to John, to Karina, to Ryan, to Kelly, to Matthew, to Diana and Haley, to Corliss, to Giselle, to Sina, to Robin and Pablo. You spent so much wonderful time with us. Thank you, thank you. Right now, we're actually going to drop another Padlet link in the chat. Here it is. And the question is, if you'd like to share one thing you learned today or one idea you plan on using this summer, let's have a look at where this collective brain is currently. Let's have a look at this Padlet. Great. Thank you, Melissa, for dropping that in. Let's have a look where we're at. And I really appreciate from my CTL colleagues how they've built in tools that we can all use in our classrooms this summer. Yeah, let's just take a moment to have a look at the Padlet. Coming from a different institution and starting to understand what goes on at Berkeley, what we have available. Yes, well, welcome to Berkeley for the first time for teaching.
Thank you so much.
It's great to have you. Yeah, compassion. I love that Sarah top noted our time to get today, and Glynda, with how we might evidence and exemplify for our students what it means to work together with compassion. So that seems to be something that's coming through strongly. Thinking about co-construction, wasn't that amazing to think about the ways that we actually might do that work with our students? Somebody in chat had posted that they call their students colleagues. So even the way in which our terminology reflects the choices that we make about partnership with our students. Love this idea too. I'm just reading from the Padlet right now of a project that's built over the entire course of the summer, rather than what we often do, which is just put things at the end and then prepare our students for that big bullet point. Growth mindset. Yes, podcasts. Pablo, are you ready for it? So in thinking about where we're at as a group, we are going to share all the slides with you so that you can go back into this collective wonder and have a look at the pathway that you've walked together. And also are there any questions in chat that you want to leave us with? Because we can also provide some follow-up after our time together today. So if anybody has a question, please just drop it into chat and then we can take them on as a group. Any final questions? There's Pablo's email. Thank you, Pablo. You're going to be very generous, aren't you? Session was recorded. Yes, we can probably publish it and share the slides. I would say give us a day or two. It's a bit of a cram time of semester in preparing for the end. Lovely to have you. Thank you so much. And there's a couple of final notes that we really wanted to make sure that we shared with you. One is that there are course development grants available for summer. So Doug is going to share the link to the course development grants that are available. And also we would love you to share feedback with us, please, so that we can make these events as appropriate and needed as possible. So that feedback is always incorporated and circulates back into the next year's offering. The course development grants are available to everybody who's been in this room today. And in thinking about co-construction, a lot of us want to bring partners in. We want to have guests join. We want to think about the wealth of experience outside of the university walls, or we might want to look and think about partners across campus. And of course, in terms of thinking of equity and baking equity into our work, we also want to honor and recognize that expertise. So we are encouraging that honorariums are provided to the guests that join us. So again, course development grants are used in a multitude of ways, but often to recognize the expertise that comes into the classroom. Let's have a look. A couple of questions about the reading load for summer courses. Let me just read from Emily straight away. A couple of us had questions about reading load. COSI has information on how many reading hours per week are required, but reading hours per week seems so incredibly variable for students. Do we have any guidance on this? I can just share myself that I am paring down my reading substantially even during the regular semesters. Maybe many of you are in the room. And we all know that this is a tried and true trick, is that we have our required reading and we have our suggested reading. And also in terms of the multimodality of the kind of works and accessibility to the content of our class, I'm really encouraging myself, and we're encouraging colleagues to also have a podcast or a video or a movie or some other way to enter the landscape of thinking about the learning of the material. On the Senate committees that American Cultures is involved with, actually Senate colleagues who are reviewing course submissions are now looking for less reading, understanding the ways in which we have so many layers of anxiety in our students' lives. So I think, Emily, you just picked up on what is like tonally changing, but in terms of regulation has not shifted. So thanks for that question. Marisella, do you want to jump in with any advice on that particular question?
Yeah, I think always a tried and true method is consistently checking in with students, gathering their feedback about work hours, whether that's reading hours or just time on task, and collecting students' feedback about their learning experience. I popped into the chat a link to CTL's consultation services, and one of my favorite ones is called the Mid-Semester Inquiry. We offer this service during summer as well. It's an opportunity for CTLs as a third-party group to meet with your students, collect anonymous feedback, and help the instructor navigate that feedback in a way that's evidence-based and grounded in pedagogy. So it's a wonderful thing that I'm always a big fan of.
Yeah, and in terms of that kind of feedback and reaching out to students, you may have already thought of this, but an actually pre-semester survey on a Google form. And it's also part of that welcoming structure. It's like, welcome, looking forward to meeting you. And here's some questions about how I might support you during the weeks to come. Like, do you have regular internet connection? How are you actually experiencing the class? Is it on a tablet? Is it on a phone? Do you expect to be in Berkeley? Do you have work hours that might take you away? Anything else you want to share about your relationship to summer and the class? And that really kind of sets the relationship up for success to have that pre-semester survey. Raf is asking, is accommodating students who fall behind with unexpected challenges? Absolutely. Again, this gets to the flexibility structure and the multimodality of having assignments that might be not just a large project right at the end, but you have enough flexibility built into the semester so that the student can actually also feel as if there is room to insert themselves and not feeling like everything is riding on one thing. Marisella, you probably have advice too on the idea of incremental learning over the semester to support students who may fall behind.
I think opportunities where you can scaffold learning in the formative space that leads to the summative or more higher stakes space, thinking about giving students practice, for example, with technology or with exam questions so that we don't make assumptions about a level of students' preparedness going into any assignment that might be high stakes and anxiety inducing.
Exactly. Yeah. Great. And any other questions or advice from the room? We're a small enough crowd now. If people want to pop their mic open for the last couple of minutes. Having said that, we're 32 people.
I have a tiny suggestion just because I discovered this randomly, but as soon as you're assigned to teach a class within Cal Central, which I think, at least I have for my summer class in session D, you can start creating your B courses site.
Yeah.
The button's hidden, but if you go to all courses on B courses, at the upper right hand corner, create a site, and then create a course site, it'll let you start building it. So if you want to start doing this before, 3 days before your class starts, apparently campus now supports that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was a question about sharing B courses sites, which technically you can add people to one if people feel comfortable with adding somebody to the current site. Yeah, thanks Marisella for dropping that. Any other advice for the room? So I would love if everybody could fill in the Google form. We'd love for that feedback. And again, don't forget the course development grants. There is not that much support on campus financially, but there is a little bit, and a little bit can go a long way in bringing people into the classroom with you. Okay, Michelle says they're taking over a class from a colleague who put a lot of effort into building their course. So it sounds like she'll be able to share her B course site with me. Again, this is a question of that individual instructor and their relationship to their material and proprietary. But speaking from my own point of view, yes, I share my B course site before the semester has ended. And then what you can do is that you open up a new B course site and you can migrate pages across. So you can choose what you actually want to bring in. So you might not want to bring somebody else's assignment in or their discussion prompts, but you can build in course content or course structure You just need to borrow files from a course site. So it's definitely possible. Great, thanks again, Marisella. Yeah, we're not the technical experts. We've just had some experience in the classroom with B courses. Fantastic. Okay, let's give everybody a little bit of time back into their lunchtime. Again, round of applause and thanks and appreciation to everybody who spent so much time with us today, and for everybody else who's been in the room listening to this great advice. Good luck with the summer. And CTL colleagues and AC colleagues are around, and hopefully you've found people in the room that you can connect with. So we're looking forward to meeting you in person if you're on campus, or connecting with you online. Good luck with the summer, and thank you for all the work you're about to do.